Or is Clark Kent Superman's alter ego?
5, 4, 3, 2. There you go. Try again.
Is Superman Clark Kent's alter ego, or is Clark Kent Superman's alter ego? Welcome to Champion Reads, where we dive into the best books in the personal development genre and section and talk about how we can apply them to our lives, what they mean to us, what we can learn from those books. Champion Reads is brought to you by Champion Circle, the place where you can find like-minded entrepreneurs and individuals striving to work together to grow, accelerate our lives, our businesses, our goals. Through the use of things like the mastermind methodology. You can find out more about Champion Circle by visiting our website, mychampionscircle.com. Again, mychampionscircle.com to accelerate your life, your business, your goals, and anything else you would like to accelerate. Champion Reads is brought to you by executive producers, the wonderful Mr. William Blake, myself, Ian Sturmer, and we are joined today by our incredible founder of Champion Circle, the joyous John Kovach Jr. And jumping right into it, today's book, we are discussing The Alter Ego Effect by, I moved that book off of me. John, who's the author of this book? That's a bad thing to say.
Todd Herman.
Todd Herman, thank you. See, we're excited about the principles in this book more than the people. You know, it's what's written that counts, not who said it.
Isn't that what we're all about? We're all about sharing our opinions, our thoughts, and our attitudes about each of the books that we're reading. You know, whether the author appreciates it or not, this is a great place for us to just discuss and get into conversation about various topics.
Thank you. Good cover for me there. That's a modern life. I'm reading this book or listening to it on Audible, which means I don't have a physical copy to look at and didn't pull up the Audible on my phone first. But just to start out, the alter ego effect. So first question people may be asking is, what is an alter ego? And I'm going to try and give just a brief example of that. At the beginning, we said, Superman and Clark Kent, they're the same person. They fulfill different roles. But one of them is the real, genuine person. And the other is a persona put on to hide the identity, hide that real identity because he wants to protect those people around him. And in the book, Todd talks about this, that the real person is actually Superman. He's really an alien who landed in Kansas and grew up there and has all these powers. And he hides that behind the mild-mannered Clark Kent reporter, where he can still fulfill his desire to help people through the news media and what that can do and shedding light on things that people need to be aware of. But he can do that because he hides that Superman persona. Now, for a lot of us, we're probably thinking we're in the exact opposite position. I'm a meek, mild-mannered Ian Sturmer who wants to step into the boardroom with this powerful Superman persona and just, drive my ideas forward and achieve huge success. How do I do that if I'm just mild-mannered? And that's where the alter ego idea comes in. Can we create an alter ego for ourselves to help us be who we want to be, or maybe be who we really are underneath, and allow that person we are underneath to come through. Now, in this, he gives a lot of sports analogies and athletes he's worked with. So I'm going to push it to John for a second here, because he is our resident athlete and still in way better shape than I am, and spent a lot of time working with athletes. And that's my build up to let you know I'm passing the baton, sports analogy here, John, to you. And how does the alter ego affect you in I was about to say performance, but I guess that's the right word, in your athletic performance and competitions versus you in your daily life?
It's interesting. I think everyone has access to this without realizing it, because we all experience emotion and we all have physical bodies that have the ability to pump themselves up through adrenaline and take on a different persona, or even a different personality in a brief moment. And the reason for that is our lives, our bodies, our chemical compounds are built on this ability to inflate our energy. And everything is energy. So, if you're a normal, docile type person and you fall under the realm of, I'm an introvert, I don't really make a lot of noise, especially out in public, I don't put myself out there, that seems to be a persona you take on. And it could be your personality. However, could you put on a mask and become something else? Absolutely. People do it every year at Halloween, and there's just all kinds of things. But as far as like what you're saying, Ian, all athletes have to show up and they have to practice, and they have to practice like they're going to play, and then they have to play like they practiced, or they need to play like they dreamed about, or using their energy at a play mentality or a play energy level. And so when you take on a various frequency of that, you tend to step into an alter ego. Because if I'm out on the court playing basketball, let's say, I'm just going with a different sport today, even though everyone knows I was a track and field runner. Let's say I'm out on the basketball court today, and I lay a foul, or I'm shooting threes, or I'm playing really aggressive defense, and then all of a sudden, I foul out and I'm kicked out of the game, and I go step into the locker room, and I'm no longer allowed to play. Am I the same person on the court as I am in the locker room, or out on the street, or before the game, or after the game? And it's a funny question to ask, because we are the same people, but I'm not going to be wearing my heavy hitting, tight defense role in public when I'm interacting with people versus when I'm on the court. I'm going to take on a different persona. So this idea that the alter ego effect is heavily applied by athletes is so true, because while and this is not true in any way, but while LeBron James is completely extroverted leadership, um, and takes command of the basketball court while he's playing, it would be interesting to know how often he is outspoken off the court too, right? He might be a leader of his family or his kids. We were just talking with Willie in the backstage about coaching and coordinating his children as they run around screaming and having a good time. So it's just it's an important thing to realize that we all take on a different persona. I'm not going to be in my track and field mode, race mode, every single time, second of the day. If I did, I'd probably keel over from a heart attack, because what happens is I have to pump myself up. I have to give myself an adrenaline shock of energy in order to achieve a particular performance and a style of performance. And when I do that, then I can compete at a various level. But I'm not going to be doing that every single day. We know some people who are like that. And there's this old, I forget who it was. Was it Terry Crews? It was one of those famous NFL players. And when people were like, making mistakes in the office, he was like flat out like just clothesline, just totally taking them out, and it was hilarious. It was this really funny. I don't know if it was a Super Bowl commercial or not, but it basically was showing us that this person is at the same on the field as they are off the field, and that's a little unacceptable in society. But anyways, just wrapping this up, Ian. Sorry I took so long on this, but I just wanted to like pour into people and just help them understand like this idea that an alter ego effect, it is an interesting concept, and we do this on a daily basis already, athletes especially. But when we go to work or when we go to school, we put on various roles or hats. We When you're a student at school, you're not the teacher, so therefore you're not standing up and teaching the class over the teacher, right? You have to put on a particular role. And so we do take on these ideas, these alter egos, in order to fit within society. But there's pros and cons to doing them and not doing them. And I think that's part of the discussion, scheduled for later. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, I think something you said there, that we all do this. And as you were talking, it made me realize we already use alter egos all the time in our own life without even realizing it. A couple things I put down. How many of us become a different person when we get in a car and get behind the wheel and start driving? I know I try not to have words come out of my mouth that I don't usually use, but there are certainly words shouting in my mind that I don't use in normal life that I direct towards other drivers when I'm driving. There are actions I would take behind the wheel that I wouldn't take in normal life. If you've ever scrolled through the comments, especially on a political post or news site, and see what people say, my guess is they would never say those things out loud in pleasant company, at least. There's a different persona that we take with that. Now, I've, in my earlier years, worked in customer service a long time. I worked in hotels, and some really nice hotels. And I would put on my uniform, which in one case was a tuxedo we wear at the front desk at nighttime. When I put on that tuxedo, I felt very different. There was a different alter ego that naturally came out because of how I was dressed and the atmosphere I was in. And I felt a little bit more polite and, Bruce Wayne's butler, Alfred Pennyworth-ish in the way I acted. And I felt kind of a surge of pride the more I could nail this, butler type character as I was working. And I think that alter ego naturally comes out in different situations. And the question is, can we control that? Now, before I answer that question or throw that question out to you, that's my next question for you, is how do we control it? But you mentioned something about a mask earlier. And as we move to one place to another, it's kind of like putting different masks on to allow that side of us to come out. I was having a conversation with a friend a little while ago, and she mentioned this costume party she went to. And she said, when everyone's all dressed up in costumes and everything, then they're more doing whatever they want. They're less inhibited in that. And I'm going to throw it. I was kind of proud of the comment I made. And I started writing down comments I like that I say. So it's only when you wear a mask that you can allow your true self to come through. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some truth in that, in this alter ego effect. Who do we really want to be? If we can put on that mask, whether it's a literal uniform, track uniform, holding your pole vault pole, or whether it's stepping into a situation and mentally putting that on, you can allow your true self that you want to be to come through. So how do we find our alter ego? How do we find what that is going to be? I know I started asking another question. I forgot what it was. So answer each one, John. What sounds good to you?
I'll jump in here and just quickly say I love what you said, and this is an interesting concept for people to hear because, we live in a world and a society where something has become more real and more prominent than thought of or comprehended before, and that is this idea of imposter syndrome. And it's because a lot of us are living at a particular frequency that feels out of place, out of norm. And what a lot of that has to do with is us deciding what persona we want to take on, and then living at and then getting exhausted from it, or feeling like we are not in alignment with who we really are. And it's a without getting into the depths of that conversation, because I'm not clinically licensed or anything to really speak into that as a psychologist, but it is an interesting place, because then again, I've seen this on every reality TV show. I'm watching one right now called The Traders, and The Traders is all about a group of people brought together from random places, and then there are traders amongst them, and the traders' job is to stay under the radar and act as if they were one of the faithfuls, and then the faithfuls figure out by voting each other out who are the traitors, and the traitors murder at night. It's a really interesting social experiment. But when you take on the persona and you are a traitor, but you are also a faithful, you are working extra. You are working 10 times harder than everyone else, because not only do you have to decide who to take out in secret, but you also have to remain a quote unquote faithful and act that part. And so when it comes to being a particular persona, I'll go back to the question you asked: is Superman Clark Kent, or is Clark Kent Superman? And arguably enough, a lot of the superheroes in the superhero world, we'll just go with that. I almost said in the world. We're all superheroes. A lot of the superheroes in the world, they take on two personas. There's their super saving persona, and then there's their normal life persona. And I just think that's fascinating. But anyways, long story short is that we do we do put on masks, but at the end of the day, who do you envision yourself being when you close your eyes at night and you think of the perfect you, the most authentic you? Who is that? And you can imagine whatever you want, because you can become it. And this is getting into, I know Todd Herman is the author of this book, but when you get into concepts like the law of attraction, and you start talking about things that like Bob Proctor talked about, all of a sudden we're talking about creating by imagination. And this is one of those things: is who do you think you are? And if who do you think you are is who you want to be, then be it. And it takes practice. It may not be you 100% of the time. It might be you 30 or 40% of the time, when you're in public, or when you're out and about, or when you're performing in the place that you want to be performing. That's what it's all about. And I think that we can get used to that, but it takes time and practice, just like everything else. Authenticity doesn't mean natural. Authenticity means how you plan to be when you decide to be it. And that's something that people recognize. And you can't use authenticity in a fake way, because that just doesn't work, right? Authenticity is all about being, and people would say natural or normal, but it's not about that. It's being that self that really leans into the ability to share and care and be amongst other people that people appreciate and love and resonate with. Authenticity is all about your true self, not necessarily your natural self. And there's a difference, right? So we can get into that later. I don't want to take us off topic, but I just kind of went off on a tangent there.
I love how our conversation's gone from the alter ego effect to really focusing on the difference in conscious and subconscious. And I have two thoughts in both of those realms. So subconscious or unconscious. John, I love what you said towards the beginning of so for myself, when I'm at home, I'm not a coach or speaker. I'm a father to my kids and a husband to my wife. And so I approach everything with more love, with more understanding. And since they're, like, my oldest is 4 years old, since they're kids and babies, I'm not going to hold them responsible for things that I would hold an adult for. Right. And then flipping it to the other side, when I'm a coach, when I'm a speaker, I'm more bold and assertive. I'm able to dig deeper because they understand more what's going on, and I can ask questions to help them dig deeper into that. But rarely do I mix the two. Rarely do I come in as like a father, a mentor to my coaching and speaking and come at it with more love and understanding, which I do, right? But it's at a point of being able to still share a message. And then rarely do I come into with my kids and my wife of being a coach and a speaker to where I'm loud. I keep using bold and assertive, but like I'm more upfront with what's going on. So that unconscious and subconscious, the different roles, those different hats, just naturally have us go different directions, right? And that's what everyone does. Now if you don't want to be one certain way in something, how do you fix that? Well, that's when you jump into the conscious side that we've been talking about, which is like the things with the alter ego effect, about the laws of attraction, about what Napoleon Hill says, and everything in between. It's now that you understand kind of what's going on, you make a more conscious effort to be a certain way in a certain environment. So like when before I get on stage, I'm at home and I'm practicing my speeches. I'm getting it so refined so when I go up there, there's rarely any mistakes. That's me consciously putting in the effort in the back end. So in the front end, I present myself a certain way. As well as when I put on either my suit jacket or put on just like right before I get on stage, and I'm like, this is me now, this is me present, this is for you guys, and I jump on and deliver a speech. I have so much confidence, so much courage going out because I like flip a switch in a way to be more intentional in that moment. And so wrapping that up, like we subconsciously have our different roles that we want and that we provide to our families, relationships, at work, at school, at play. Um, and then how do you fix that? You jump to consciously of now you understand it. Now you're able to move forward and do small, consistent steps to where you need to go.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to spill the beans real quick here on the alter ego effect, which is really what Willie is talking about here. You consciously decide what you want to be, and you create that character in your mind that you can step into. Just like, not long ago, Willie had a webinar and he put on a jacket that we hadn't seen him wear before. And John and I both commented afterwards, that jacket did something because that was just a great presentation that he gave, that you gave, Willie. So the alter ego effect is deciding who you want to be for a particular situation, for a role that you have in your life, and consciously creating what that is. Not just faking it, not pretending, although that might be a first step in it, but allowing those parts of your personality, those parts of your desire to come through. And Todd Herman, Todd teaches us in the book to literally create that character, just like Superman created Clark Kent. Give it a name, give it a personality, and practice it so that you can come out and be that character, that alter ego, naturally, because it's you. It's still part of you. But make it a whole separate part of you that you can draw upon whenever you need to. So that's my wrap-up thought for this.
I'll jump in there and say as well, like, if you think about an actor, I think widely, because we started with superheroes, let's think about like Chris Hemsworth plays the part of Thor in the Avengers, okay? And let's say Chris Hemsworth decides to put on his Thor costume and go out into public. So is Chris Hemsworth, or is he acting as Thor, even though he's wearing the Thor costume? And that's for him to decide. If he has fun and he just wants to be Thor and hide under that, he's not hiding at all. He's out in plain sight, drawing up excitement amongst the crowds and having fun with that. And he takes on this persona, and people are yelling, Chris, 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 and he doesn't respond because he's Thor, right? And how interesting is that? Because when we through Willie's example, when you're on stage speaking and you come off the stage and people are like, you were amazing, and you're no longer on stage, are you still the person on stage, or are you going back to being a humble person saying, thank you, that was very kind, and you're very formal, and you're not the same boisterous person you were on stage, right? There's again, every time I speak, it makes it sound like you're being someone you're not, but it doesn't actually land that way. The origin of an alter ego is this idea that we are always unsatisfied with our results, or that we're always wanting to be something that we're not. But the truth is we can be whatever we want. And that's such a cliche, but it is something that all of the wealthiest people in the world talk about. It's being exactly what you want because you thought of it, you dreamt of it, it became who your thoughts became reality, and reality became your life. And I just think that when we accept the idea that in every moment we have a choice, we have a decision to make, and that decision can either be to be what we want to be, or to be the same old, and hide underneath whatever it is we're hiding underneath. And I think that we also brought into this perspective a conversation on the idea of roles. And I always like using the physical hat perspective, or the example of wearing a hat, the father hat. And then when you step outside the house, you're now wearing the professional hat, or the go make money hat, or the whatever it needs to be for you to achieve your goals. And in each of those roles, you can choose or decide to be the best in that role, or you can choose or decide to be tired or exhausted or grumpy or terrible or out of sync or behind schedule. You have a choice. And a lot of us have been in those positions where we've decided to be okay with the negative rather than the positive. But there's so much positive to be had. There's so much to accept. There's so much to step into. I think that the power of the alter ego effect is really interesting. We've talked about actors. We've talked about masks and Halloween and costumes. We've talked about athletes, and all of those are just different roles that we take on. But this idea that we can be whatever we want to be, now that is interesting. And if that's something that we're talking about, everyone should be interested, because I will admit, the difference between authenticity, the what's it called? There's the authenticity, and I just lost my thought. Anyways, I'll pass it over to you guys, but I just wanted to share that when we take on those personas, we have a decision to make, and we can make them the best, or that we can be mediocre, or we can be whatever we want to be and whatever we choose to be. And that's the harsh reality that we all have to accept and realize that, yeah, that's where I'm at. That's what I chose to do today. Because when you take ownership, then it becomes a personal challenge and a personal experience. And that's I think one of the most motivating factors of all.
I think you nailed it. The most motivating factors of all. Like, that shouldn't be sad that this is where we're at. This is where we be like, the truth of it is we chose ourselves into the life that we have right now. Of course, there's external factors, but the choices we made got us to where we're at. But that's not something that's sad. That's something that can be hopeful. Because I know that I've done it, and a lot of other people. What we do is I don't know if it's a victimized mentality, but we put shame on ourselves, being like, oh, I wish I could be more. So many other people are doing great. Oh my goodness, my high school girlfriend is off with another guy who's just like being super awesome, right? We come up with these like shame topics that convince ourselves that we're in just a bad place. But if you think about it in like the long-term perspective of things, having your origin story and having that thought of today, right now, is where I get to start. And today, right now, is going to be my story we talked about superheroes, for the superhero that I'm going to be. That's empowering. That's amazing. Because I don't know if you guys ever read a superhero book where their story starts with them being awesome, in the middle they're awesome, and the end they're awesome. That's one of the most boring stories of all. The best stories come from the underdogs. The ones who went through the pain, went through the suffrage, went through the hardship, and then made a choice to be something different. And it was that choice that made them a superhero. It was that path that they started to walk down that made them become the superhero. Not what life gave them, and not what is happening in their life right now. So as we wrap up our conversation, the beautiful thing of it is, like, we get to choose today to write the story that we want for the future. And as we go and write that story, we might be we might start in chapter 1, we might start in chapter 8. But that superhero moment, that's in chapter like 100, 200. So it's going to happen. We just got to keep experiencing. We just got to keep writing those stories.
Love that. And if my superhero moment is in chapter 100, I'm hoping that I'm on chapter 99 in my life right now. So that's all ready to come out. And I think that's kind of the topic we've kind of settled in at the end of this, is that all of these things are inside us now. And that's a quote John gives us quite often: the power is already inside you. Willie said, these things are inside us. We get to choose them. And the alter ego is a method to help us choose the qualities of our life, our personality we want to shine through, and create a path for those things. So with that, I thank you all for joining us on this episode of Champion Reads as we dive into The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. Next time, I'm going to pull a copy of the book out to get that name right.
Todd, if you're listening, we mean no offense. This is just a highlight of your awesomeness in your book. Todd Herman, everybody.
Herman, yes. The concept is so good that everything else overshadows it. And maybe I'll create my own alter ego for Todd and call him Bill or something so I get it straight. But pick up a copy of the book, read through it, whether you go to your favorite bookstore or a library or download it. This is full of very practical information that we can put into our lives to help us achieve more in our lives. And speaking of achieving more in our lives, that is the purpose of our sponsor, Champion Circle, to help us achieve more through accountability, through the mastermind methodology, through incredible leaders like Mr. John Kovacs Jr., the founder of Champion Circle. You can find out more about Champion Circle by visiting mychampioncircle.com to find out when we have our online meetings and other events going on. If you would like to comment on this podcast or any others, or contribute more to these podcasts, you can reach us at info@mychampioncircle.com. Again, info@mychampioncircle.com. We would love to hear what you love about us, what you like about the podcast, about our format. If you don't like it, we'll read that too. But we'd love to hear any comments you have. Info@mychampioncircle. With that, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you gained something. I know I gained a lot through conversation with the wonderful William Blake and Mr. John Kovacs Jr. and myself, Ian Sturmer. With that, thank you. Have a wonderful week, and join us again next week as we delve even deeper into the alter ego effect. Thank you.